Hey, this is Corey Barnes.
And this is Lisa Caperton, and you're listening to Her Turn to Talk. So, Corey, I saw that you had looked for information about did you get a new kind of IUD? I'm so not up to date with all the different forms of things like that out there.
So I had 2 different marinas for 10 years. They last for 10 years, 5 years each. And since living a cleaner lifestyle these days, the marina secretes hormones.
Yeah.
And with me living this cleaner lifestyle, and the expiration for the marina was coming up just a few weeks ago, I was curious about non-hormonal methods of birth control. And I've had a great experience with the marina. I rarely had periods. If I did, it was like extreme light spotting, but otherwise it was like 10 years no periods. Really, I think I bought lights, like tampons, which are impossible to find these days. But other than that, like I never bought tampons or anything. And so I was extremely indecisive. And I could not figure out, do I want to just use condoms and spermicide? I'm not ready to have a kid right now, but we're talking about it in the next 5 years. And so I did find a IUD that is non-hormonal, and it is called the Paragard. And I did as much research as I could. And what the Paragard is, it's plastic, but it's also copper. And the copper, once inserted into a uterus, becomes toxic, creates a little inflammation, and then makes the uterus toxic to sperm. So it basically does exactly what spermicide does. And it's copper, and so that. But then, of course, and you do get your period again.
But you don't have like the hormone part.
Yeah. So I was real curious about that, and I was like, oh my gosh, a life with a period again. Like I really wanted to kind of embrace that and see what my body just naturally does on its own. But of course, I didn't know, am I allergic to copper? I didn't think I was allergic to copper. So there was all these pros and cons all over the place with everything. I didn't want to do birth control. Yeah, I just didn't want to do anything. There's the shot now. I looked into diaphragms. Like I looked into cervical caps. Like I looked into all of these things. There is so much birth control.
I didn't even know how much birth control there.
Yeah,
but I haven't thought about that in so long. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know all the different ways, which now you can explore and tell us if you, when you have periods, if you want to, all of the different methods for your period, like tampon, the cup, the underwear.
Yeah.
Like all of these.
I don't know if I'm gonna stick with tampons and pads. That's cool.
I've heard so many, I think we had this conversation. I don't think you were hiking with us, but a group of girls, we were all hiking, and we had this conversation about all the different methods and what people use. I'm just so out of touch because I haven't had a period, and
I felt the same way.
So long.
I felt like it's been 10 years of I kind of have just forgot that I knew I had this thing called my uterus. But I think I was kind of in denial about having it. And it's interesting the things that have come out now that something has opened, like a little Pandora box kind of opened up. And really embracing that. I am a woman. I possibly might have children. I do have this cool thing, called the uterus, and I have a cycle, and like all of us, that's what makes, there's so many things that make us women, but we have something very special that, we grow babies and stuff, and it has its own cycle. We have our own cycle, and why not embrace that? I was really, I did even some like period shaming stuff over the past 10 years, because I'd be like, haha, I don't have a period and you do.
Right. Well, I don't feel like I found like, I guess I don't, like, maybe it's not period shaming. Maybe that's a wrong word, because I would never, give somebody a hard time, that they're bleeding. But the loss of empathy, I guess, for cramps.
Yes,
and,
loss of
and
empathy.
the empathy of like, oh shit, I gotta go change this, or like, oh my, and I just didn't. I guess I'm so disconnected that I kind of forgot about that.
So like we always do every week, we have a badass woman today, and the badass woman is my mother
Oh, that's sweet.
because she is badass.
I like your mom.
So my mother, her name is Lucia Barnes. She was born on March 30th, 1955. And that's so funny that you said you don't know your mom's birthday because I always mix up the 30th and the 31st, and it's coming up. So I was put in my place and told it is the 30th. She was born in Manchester, Massachusetts, and literally less than a quarter mile down from the beach. So she was definitely a beach baby. She was the youngest of four, and they then moved to Essex, Massachusetts, and she grew up in this big, beautiful colonial house that was built in 1800. I'm pretty sure, in Essex, and again, right down the street from the ocean. So she definitely has ocean in her blood, and always adventurous. Her backyard, it was just beautiful, like gorgeous, big backyard. So always playing in the backyard, always adventuring, going on explorations and playing with her brothers and sisters. So she grew up there, and her childhood, from what I know, it was just like any other childhood. There was some dysfunction, but there was good times too. And she definitely learned a lot to cook and bake and sew. She's a fantastic seamstress. And she took care of my grandmother and was my grandmother's buddy for all of her life, until my grandmother passed in 2011. And inevitably, my mother became a nurse. She went to Simmons College in Boston, Massachusetts, and paid her way all through college. Grandma and Grandpa said, "We're not giving you any money," and so that's what Mom wanted to do. So she went to Simmons. It was an all girls college. And, from, high school to, I jumped ahead, but, she became a caregiver. And she's a phenomenal nurse. But she was a cheerleader, like a head cheerleader in high school. And, she, again, always active and always was working. She was a waitress for years. That's how she paid for, college herself. And when she graduated from Simmons, she stayed there in Massachusetts, and she had several nursing jobs. But the ones that I remember the most were she worked at Salem Hospital in Salem, Massachusetts, and then her last job that she got as a nurse was at Mass General in Boston, Massachusetts, and that was definitely a big deal because it's a world-renowned hospital. My mother has been a recovery nurse, a endoscopy nurse. She's worked at blood transfusion clinics. She sails, she skis, she travels, she hikes, she bikes. She, again, an amazing cook. She has thrown the best parties ever. That's how I know how to have good parties, is because my mom always threw a good party. She had two children, my brother and myself, and was married once to my father, Dan. And they are since divorced. Right now, my mom, she lives part-time in Massachusetts and part-time in Vail, which I think is pretty badass that she's able to do that and fly back and forth. And she actually just applied to become a volunteer nurse at the Vail Hospital up there. And so she's going to be volunteering a couple days a week in the emergency room. And she is now 66. I think she'll be 66 or 67. And that's just wild. That's so crazy to me. But man, she is the Energizer Buddy. She's always had that. That's like how you describe my mom. She goes, and she's nonstop, and she's very caring and very giving. She is absolutely one of a kind, and I think she's badass for all the things that she's done, and how she just doesn't stop. She has a shoulder that is a complete replacement. She's like turned into the bionic woman. I don't know how many surgeries she's had, just to, preventative maintenance, and because she's worn her body down, and she always bounces back, and she's something else. So I wanted to introduce the world to my mother, Lucy, and that's my chat about her.
Awesome. I like it. I've met your mom and I like her. She's full of life. That's one
Full of
thing. Like if
life.
I was to describe your mom, I'd be like, she's full of life.
Yeah.
So thank you for telling us about her.
Yes.
And today we are going to talk to another badass woman, right? Angela. We're gonna talk to Angela, and we get to learn all about what an ego journey is, and all about wilderness therapy. Who knew? I didn't know wilderness therapy was a thing, but it sounds completely amazing and super interesting. And what a great way to rethink your normal therapy, and that we don't have to just go sit in some cramped office and lay on a couch. Like we can be out in the world and experience the world while we are helping to heal our mind, body, and soul. So without further ado, let's talk to Angela. Hi, Angela.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing well.
We're so happy to have you here. Would you go ahead and introduce us, or introduce yourself to us, and give us your
Sure.
last name?
Yeah. My name is Angela Aaron. More recently, a lot of people still know me by my maiden name, Merrill, but it's Aaron. And I work at a collective, and my business name is Expanding Roots Integrative Wellness, which has been a very long journey of getting to that name and what that really means. And we'll get into more of that. But by trade, I'm a psychotherapist with a lot of other areas of specialization.
Awesome. We're super excited to learn about you and learn about your business. So you just got married?
Yeah, about a year and a half ago.
Congratulations. Corey is about to get
I'm about to
married.
get married.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Changing your name is a little bit of a nightmare, but I'm
I
working
heard.
it out. I'm
Yeah.
working it out. Yeah.
I remember it's been a while since I had to go through that, but I do remember doing that. And it's just a pain.
It's a pain,
really,
especially with a business,
Yeah.
just because there's so much that gets built around your name. But
Sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, congratulations.
thank you.
One of the things we were kind of just talking to you about was, how we found you. And we found you by searching online. And what popped out to me was this, you do something with eco wilderness therapy.
Yeah.
Tell us, what is that exactly?
Well, how far back should I go?
You can go back
Yes.
as far back as you want. You can go to the
Go
beginning.
all the way
Okay.
back
I
because
think
you got
I'll
a great
go-
story.
I think I'll go back a little bit. And so originally I'm from rural Maine, and I grew up in, a gorgeous log cabin in the middle of the woods on a lake and, the middle of nowhere, really. Our road was like a 1-lane 4-wheeler path to get to where we lived. And when I was a kid, I had no appreciation really consciously for how special it was. And by the time I was ready to go to college, I was, get me out of rural Maine. I need to experience something different. And so I went to George Washington University my freshman year of college and was going to study political science and change the world that way. And one of the things that started to happen when I was in DC was I actually started to get pretty sick, and I didn't really know what was going on, but I wasn't happy, and the city was not working for me. DC was it's a fantastic place in a lot of ways, but I was super removed from nature, and it took me a while to figure out that's what was going on. And so I decided to transfer out, take some time off, really reassess what I was doing and who I was and what I needed, and eventually transferred back to the University of Maine. And at the end of one of my first classes there, one of my professors said, "Hey, do any of you need a summer job? My friend owns a rafting company and he's looking for raft guides." And I think I had been rafting one time in my life before, but had spent most of my life on the water. And I said, "Yes, sign me up. I want to do this." And so that summer, I remember so vividly driving to the interview. It was in this little town called Caratunk, Maine. Again, out in the middle of nowhere. I had never been there before. And as I was driving there, I felt this. The only way I can describe it is like a portal into the next phase of my life. It was just so clear that it was a life-changing experience that was happening. And so I started raft guiding and also doing other wilderness retreats and rock climbing retreats and canoe retreats and hiking retreats and things like that. And my very first multi-day retreat was with a group of inner city kids from Harlem. And they had never been in the woods. They had never set up a tent or cooked a meal over an open fire. And the transformation that I saw in those kids during that time was something that I couldn't really conceptualize what was going on. I was like, this is profound. Something really deeply is happening in these folks. And I started slowly kind of putting together this concept of, what wilderness therapy is, which at the time I still didn't even know there was a word for. I didn't know that was a thing. And so kept doing that, and then found the book called Nature Deficit Disorder, Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv. And I read that and it felt like a Bible. I was just like, oh my gosh, what is this? This is incredible. People are putting, real words to this. And so then, long story, kind of still long, one of my undergraduate professors reached out to me after I had finished my undergrad a few years later and said, I've heard of this place called Naropa, and they have a degree in wilderness therapy. You're the first person that I thought of. You've got to go check this out. And again, never heard of Naropa, never knew wilderness therapy was even a degree, and was out here like a few weeks later for an interview, and my world just completely changed course. And now what my work has morphed into is this really transpersonal relationship of psychology and ecology and the relationship between the two. And the premise being that our relationship to the natural world is one of the foundational pillars of health for us all. And how that morphed and evolved over the years was kind of some of what I was sharing, but it's been a journey. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And when a patient or a client comes to work with you,
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at your website because I was like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
I want to work with you. What is that like? Or do you tell them, oh, thank you for coming, go out in nature now? Or do you bring pine cones in? Or, what does that look like?
All of the above. So
Yeah?
I actually genuinely do have a nature basket in my
cool.
office.
Yes.
That has all kinds of, fantastic pieces that I've collected over the years that I can incorporate in an office setting. I also have, easy access to pretty places to go for a walk during an hour-long session if we're just trying to be outside for an hour session, or we'll do more individualized, longer ceremonial time on the land or weekend-long retreats. It really, really depends on the person. It's super, super individual. And really a big part of it isn't just the relationship to the world, it's also the relationship to our bodies as part of this ecological identity, this living, breathing being that we are, and our connection to the natural world. And so there's so many different components. When somebody first comes in, I do a really big assessment, and one of the things we look at is what's going on in the body too, because what I had seen for so many years doing more traditional psychological work is that people were spending a lot of money and going to talk therapy thinking that, talk therapy is what I need. I'm depressed, I need to talk. I'm anxious, I need to talk. And really missing the fact that there might be a severe nutrient deficiency.
Right.
For instance, vitamin D deficiency can be caused by lack of time outside. A severe vitamin D deficiency can also instigate anxiety. And so it's so interwoven between, how are you taking care of your body? How has potentially our toxic environment or not paying attention to what our bodies need created this experience of a mental health condition that really is much more related to physiologically what's going on, or the relationship to the natural world and how we're using our bodies. And so it really depends on the person, and it looks really different. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so cool.
Yeah.
I was surprised to hear you say that. Yes, it's all of the above.
All of the
And I'm
above.
like, oh, it is everything that I imagined.
Yeah.
And that's intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's fantastic. And so basically what I had seen over the years is that a little bit of the arrogance in our field and many fields in the medical field, where it's like, oh, I've got the answer, or I've got the skill set or the medication or something
Right.
that's going to make you better. And it's so much more dynamic than that.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of it, you can correct me, but it's like everybody's looking for the quick fix.
Right.
And then I assume that as a professional, you've got to be like, well, if I want to stay in business, I got to think I need a quick
Right.
fix or so people will come.
Right.
And it's not necessarily like, I don't think we all get to these places quickly.
No.
And so why do we think that we can get out of them quickly? I don't know,
And interestingly enough, though, one exciting what the word I'm looking for is development in the field lately is a modality called EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a mouthful. The thing about EMDR that's really, really cool is it's a modality that's pulling together a lot of these things that we're talking about that's really, really scientifically backed. And ironically, Francine Shapiro, the woman who founded it because she was going on a walk. And she was outside going for a walk, thinking about something that was troubling to her. And by the end of the walk, she was feeling better. And she said, well, what's the mechanism here? What's actually going on? So she started doing some really amazing research. And what she found out was that the mechanism was the bilateral stimulation, meaning both sides of the body were in motion at the same time. So EMDR therapy has been formed by basically doing whatever you need to do to bilaterally stimulate the body, traditionally in an office setting during an hour-long therapy session. And so people use, hand buzzers that go back and forth, or auditory buzzers that go back and forth, or tapping. You can get the same effect being outside with clients, right? So it's another piece that's really given us the data to say why wilderness therapy is actually so effective, because getting the body online and getting the movement of both sides of the body is actually forcing the brain into a totally different way of processing difficult memories or trauma or stress or anything like that. And so it's a really, I felt this huge win for like the wilderness therapy community when EMDR took storm.
Yeah. I like that a lot, actually. And because I know, like, Corey and I, we hike together, which we haven't hiked together in quite a while.
Like, oh gosh, we got to get back out. No
I know,
wonder we feel better.
I was just sitting here
Yes,
thinking as she's
true.
talking about things, thinking, oh my gosh, I miss it.
This
I
is
miss it
fascinating.
so much.
It
I
really
miss
is.
my hiking. I haven't been in a while. But we, meditation is like, really out there. I myself have a really hard time doing it, but Corey and I have done it where we've been on a hike together, and we're like, okay, we're going to meditate for this 5 minutes, and we're going to not talk, and we're just going to hike, and we're going to like go in, and have our
walking
own
meditation.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that for me is like the best way to do it. And I love it so much. It's something about like, I don't know, it makes me feel so much better when I can move at the same time.
Yes.
And like also helps my monkey mind, the crazy
Yes.
thoughts, when I can like focus that attention, and it makes me feel so much more present. And I'm just like just talking about this, I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to schedule.
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what we've been missing. I've
Yeah.
been going and walking the labyrinth there in Boulder at all the solstices, and I love doing that. And the energy that even though we're not outside, actually we're in the basement of a church, but that room, there's just something in there, and it's the movement, and it's not perfect. It's and there's different people, and I love, I do walking meditation there's something about it. It's lovely.
Yeah.
And I had no clue that there was an actual wilderness therapy was a thing.
It's a huge thing.
I didn't know.
It's a huge thing. Finally.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And, what I call an eco journey is basically an individualized process for relating to your ecological identity, your relationship to yourself, your relationship to the natural world, your relationship to others, and your relationship to what you consider higher than self, whether that's spirit or God or energy, whatever, a person's relationship to that is. And really looking at, of all of those categories and those relationships, most of us have one or two of them that we can say, oh, I feel pretty good about that. I feel pretty good about my relationship with others. I'm a pretty good friend, and I feel really good about my relationship to spirituality, and I, meditate 5 times a week, and I go to my Sangha or whatever it is, but then people be like, well, yeah, no, my relationship with the natural world is kind of waning, and my relationship with myself, oh, wait, what's that? And so really looking at this whole map of one's identity and saying, where does the attention really need to be, given right now?
And when you say like having a relationship with the natural world, like what does that mean?
Yeah. Again, it really depends on the person. And for some folks, like, I had someone come in to see me a while back, and she said, I literally think that my psychological pain is directly correlated to the situation our earth is in right now, like the way we are, not taking care of our world. And she said, I really, really, really feel the grief of that on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not psychologically well, and I need, to focus on this piece. For some people, it's that they aren't taking care of their bodies, and that being out on a walk or a hike with their friends creates a level of psychological wellness that's really profound. For some people, there's a really deep, deep connection to earth energy and actually feeling one with the living environment around them. And, really this understanding that the energy that moves through all things is moving through us. And that when we really deepen and understand that, and we feel in relationship with the trees and the land and everything, that we also then are going to take better care of it. We're going to be better stewards of the land. And this feedback loop that happens when we're in relationship.
Right. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, no wonder she's on our podcast. We needed her.
And again, then the ripple effects with what actually happens, like physiologically, when we are not in relationship with the earth in a healthy way, we get sick.
Yeah.
Right.
We get ill. Yep. We have vitamin deficiencies. There's so many things that happen that, then people are 50, 60, 70, 80, their body's starting to deteriorate, and these really, really challenging issues are coming up. And what we're finding is a lot of this has to do with our lack of connection to the world in that way.
And you work with children.
I don't work with children as much anymore. I worked with children for a long time. At this point, my practice is 18 and up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you'll work with people one-on-one then?
Yes.
And couples?
One-on-one, couples, yep. And families as long as the children are 18 and up. Yeah.
And what does the couples therapy look like? Wilderness therapy?
Well, this summer I had a couple that we went stand-up paddleboarding together for our couples therapy sessions.
Yeah.
So it's really whatever they're wanting. Some couples want to be hiking. Some people want to be, they asked at the end of one session in the office, they're like, can we paddleboard next time? I'm like, yes, we can paddleboard next time.
I think that's so amazing, and that's such a good idea.
Yes.
Because it takes almost a pressure of like, you're not sitting on this little couch and
it does.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, this is like a whole new world just opened up.
It's fantastic.
And you were born to do this.
It feels that way.
Without a doubt.
It actually feels that way. Yeah, I
It's
feel really
amazing.
blessed.
And does that little cabin still exist in Maine?
It does. Actually, we just sold
Oh,
it
you
a couple
did?
months ago. So it was a bittersweet experience.
Yeah.
But my family's out here now, and I don't think we'll be going back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm from New England, Massachusetts.
Oh, nice.
So I know how beautiful Maine is up there. And I can imagine immediately right away the little cabin on the water. It's just so beautiful up there.
So
and when you
beautiful.
were did you have a question?
No, go
Lisa?
ahead.
When you were growing up out there, what did the daily life look like?
Yeah.
What was that like?
I mean, I think it looked pretty normal. The seasons that it looked different was in the winter. We definitely, like I said, lived pretty far out there, and we had to plow our own road and do a lot of shoveling. And if there was an ice storm and we lost power, it was heating with wood and a lot of, wood splitting parties. And in the winter, if the power went out and we were iced in or snowed in, even sometimes I remember going out to the lake and, doing a hole in the ice to get water, even to boil on the stove so that we had drinking water if the power was out and all of that. So it was great.
Yeah.
It was great.
No wonder it's such a huge culture shock to then go to DC.
Oh my gosh.
That's a big.
And I was on F Street,
Yeah.
which is a couple blocks down from the White House, in a dorm room that had 10 floors. And I lived on the 9th floor, and there were 1,000 students in that dorm room. I still go speechless when I think about it. Was not fun. It just was not fun for me.
Yeah.
It was.
Isn't that funny how sometimes you want something so bad for all your life and then you get and you're like, oh, this is so not what I need and not good for me.
No. And so when I moved out here, the closest thing I could find to rural Maine was Nederland in terms of something close enough to grad school that I could, get back and forth. And Ned was a great place to live while I was in school. And now my husband and I live up Lee Hill. So we're still in the mountains a bit, which is good.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
When you were studying, the program at Naropa is transpersonal wilderness therapy. Is that correct?
Yeah, when I was there, it was called transpersonal counseling psychology with a concentration in wilderness therapy. It's a mouthful.
What kind of classes did you take?
We took, Naropa was fantastic. We took things like eco-psychology and rites of passage and a lot of the traditional psychology classes. But what we were doing most was the second year of the program, it was applied in the wilderness. So we were doing a lot of the same coursework that the transpersonal counseling program was doing. But then the second year, it was the ropes course section. And so then how do you apply being a therapist and a wilderness therapist to a team of young adults at a ropes course, and then how do you apply that on a river trip? How do you apply that rock climbing, which rock climbing is another really, really good couples therapy one because there's so much of the trust and the communication with belaying one another and safety and all of that. So that's another one that's really fun and easy to apply. But
And you mentioned retreats.
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually hold retreats? Do people come to you and say, hey, could you host a retreat for us? Or what does that look like?
Right. It's so off and on over the years, it's looked a lot of different ways. I've done, for instance, I did a weekend-long family intensive where the family of a young woman I was working with flew in from out of state, and we did 4-hour intensives each day for 3 days in a row out in the wilderness as a family. And that was a really fantastic kind of, again, individualized retreat set up for that family. I've also done weekend-long retreats with my mentor and friend, Katie Asmus, who's awesome. She's here in town and does wilderness therapy as well. We do a program called Courting Your Medicine that Soy Spilkin, another mentor of mine, founded, and that is a 5-month-long program that runs once a year for days a month. And so that's a really sweet retreat. And most of that's on the land and in relationship with the land too. And then I have another retreat all planned with an herbalist friend of mine that we're hoping to find space for to run in the next year or two. So I'm excited about that.
That's fun.
Yeah.
And you enjoy doing those?
Oh, I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The deep dive with people over a longer period of time is just so potent. You can get so much out of it.
Yeah. And does it feed your soul to know that you are helping other human beings and watching them change? I'm sure you learn a lot, right?
It's fantastic. I constantly am in awe of what I have the privilege to do. And at the same time, it really just feels at the end of the day that I get to hold space, right? I get to help create a container where the innate healing and growth that already wants to happen gets to happen. We all know how to do it. I mean, it's just like EMDR, for example, bringing it back to that with the right circumstances and the right environment and the right kind of space, we will naturally move towards health. Our systems want that. But a lot of us are so stuck in this super fast-paced grind culture where we actually can't heal in those conditions. I mean, we need we need to be in a parasympathetic state in order to heal. And that's why meditation or yoga or things like that are so helpful, because they drop us into the state that our body can naturally heal in. And for so many people, it's not rocket science. It's just helping them slow down and helping them tune in and helping them see potentially what isn't really working for their particular system in this world that we kind of have all created for ourselves. And yeah.
Do you ever find that you get caught up in the race?
Constantly. Are you kidding me?
I'm like, she's zen as fuck.
No. I'm actually in a process right now. For the first time this past fall, I realized I had gotten to a point with my practice that I feel so blessed and so grateful that over the last 10 years, I've built what I've built, and it's successful and sustainable and beautiful. And I was starting to get burnt out. And I was like, look, here's this thing that I'm trying to help everyone doing, and I'm getting burnt out. It's time to slow down. And so about 3 or 4 months ago, I put a weight on my practice and just said, I'm going to, not take new clients for a while and really reassess and get clear again on what I'm doing. And so that's been important to remind myself of.
Yeah. It is so funny how we do that. We actually just had a meeting earlier today. We took a little break for the holiday, and then we were booking up recordings for January, and we're going to take some time off in February. And so we wanted to stockpile some recordings, and we were talking, we're like, oh my gosh, we have 13 episodes to record in January. What are we gonna do? And we're like, so it's like we went from this, worrying about something to totally overcorrecting.
Yes.
And then I'm like, you know what? Okay, we can stress about this, but we'll figure it out and we'll do it. And then we learn, and we're like, okay, we can learn from this, and we know next time we don't need to, But it's so funny how humans, all of us, can do that, right? We can go from 0 to 60, and then sometimes it just takes that, and then we're like, oh shit, okay, never mind. I went a little too far there.
Have you ever heard of it's kind of like a culture. It's called slow living.
Yes, I've heard of it. I don't know a lot about it.
I have a client. I pet sit, and I actually stay in people's homes
nice.
for durations of time. And so that client, she is, from my perspective, the poster child of this slow living, and the way they eat, and just the way that their house is even set up, and the little reminders and cards of mindful thinking around the house. And it's always inspiring, because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna, and even the way she talks, she is just very, and I'm like, oh, I love that, I want that. And then there's a whole culture online, and you can get all these ideas and all this business, but that idea of slowing down, there's and connecting with things and enjoying the food and feeling the earth beneath our feet, and looking at the trees, and even touching the tree. I'm here now, that kind of thing. I've been doing that kind of thing. Skiing, right? We do hiking. There's just this comfort, and just thinking about it slows down my brain.
Yes.
And so it's really cool, I can't even, this is just so fascinating.
It's so cool. Well, and I think the importance of the slowing down is that we can't hear the constant subtle messages our body's trying to give us.
Yeah.
Our body will tell us what it needs. It will tell us what's off. It will tell us if there's a deficiency of some sort. It will tell us if we're too wound up. It will tell us, but when we're not listening, or we're not slowed down enough, we can't hear it. And so then we end up in this experience of a constant override where we're just, and then our body gets to the point where it's like, you're not listening, and I'm not okay, and something's got to change. And that's usually the point at which I see people at my door.
Right. Sometimes it takes pain. That just happened to me. Before Christmas, was working out, had a little pain, pushed through it, ignored it, went for a run the next day. Went to the doctor and chiropractor, and they're both looking at me like, what are you doing? Because I was like, oh, I kept going and I kept doing this. But basically what happened is I didn't listen to my body, and then I ended up getting injured. And so then I couldn't do anything for 3 weeks. And then I was going mentally crazy and I was like, oh, and everybody's like, what happened? I'm like, well, what happened is I didn't listen to my body.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes, it takes that, unfortunately, for some of us, me to have that of like I have to be pushed and like have
Right.
that to make myself stop. I was just telling Corey, I was like, oh, it was so nice to after the holiday of I was on the couch with the heating pad and I had to just be okay with just being there, and because there was nothing else to do and I couldn't do anything else. So I'm like, okay, well this is finally like my body forced me to listen.
Right.
And so next time I will hopefully be smarter about that and listen before it gets to that. But it's so funny how I know I'm not the only one who does that. I know everybody.
Gosh, we all do.
Lots of people do that. Yeah.
And you'll see people though for preventative maintenance,
Oh,
right? If someone
definitely.
shows up and say, I'm actually feeling all right. There's this one
Yeah.
thing I just wanna
Definitely. Or another common thing I hear is, I'm all right. And I can tell that there's just something else. Like there's, some patterns I need to break, or this next level of relationship with myself, or, my relationship is good, but I feel like it could be better. And I'm just not quite capable of seeing what this next piece is, which I love doing that sort of work, because that is fun when someone's really ready to say, let's do this. I don't actually even know exactly what I need, but I am so in. And I'm like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
go.
That sounds cool.
I love, in your answers, we asked you some questions and you talk about how, we're all just fight or flight. I can't say it. Animals, but we're not in the wilderness and we're stuck at our desks.
Right.
And so and so then it turns into this internal thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I can totally see that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We, people that, for instance, have computer jobs, they could be sitting at a computer and every stressful email that comes across jacks your nervous system up a little bit more, right? And,
Right.
like, and by the end of a day, and you've been sitting for 8 hours, your nervous system is just shot. You've been dumping stress hormones all day long and not moving your body. And so now that's when we run into issues with potentially, adrenal fatigue, because the adrenals can't keep up with the amount of stress hormones that are being dumped and not being released and moved through the body. And so that's another really, really common symptom these days that people experience. It's like, you've been in fight or flight all day long for how many days a week, how many months a year, how many years of your life,
Right.
your system is shot. Yeah.
It made me think of this story my dad was telling me about. It's really happened. His manager at the power plant that he worked at back in Salem, Massachusetts, he had retired and they had a big retirement party. I mean, this guy was like worked nonstop he was stressed, right? At his retirement party,
No.
he had a heart attack.
I thought you were going to say that.
I was like, that's not the first time I've heard a story like that. The moment that we finally let go and say, oh my God, I'm done. People are so shot and so run
shot.
down. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
It's like, it's just something else. And so, I mean, and our listeners now, the importance of taking care of ourselves and to get out and to move.
To move the body.
And I'm just thinking about so many things because we could dance too, just moving. It doesn't even matter.
Well, and that's again, it goes back to individualizing it for folks. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say you need to run 3 times a week or you need to. It's like, no. What do you want? Like, what feels good in your bones? Is it dance? Is it hiking? Is it running? Is it weightlifting? I don't care what it is. Like, but what is it? What feels good in your body?
Oh, this is fantastic. Reiki?
Yes.
Tell us a little about that. I know a little about it, but for our listeners in general that don't know, am I saying it right?
Reiki.
Reiki. Could you tell us what Reiki is and what you do?
Yeah, it's an ancient healing modality from Japan originally. And really, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's based on the premise that there's an energy that moves through all things. And people talk about it with chi and chakras and basically energetic movement throughout the body.
Like meridians and
yeah, all that stuff falls into that category. But basically the idea of Reiki is that if we, again, slow down enough and tune in enough, that we can use that universal life force energy of Reiki to create greater alignment and ease within our bodies and help, energy stagnation in, Chinese medicine is also considered, one of the biggest symptoms of when things go wrong. There can be a stagnation of some sort of energy. The energy flow isn't happening. I mean, a common one that people experience is things like, constipation, for instance, is stagnation, right? It's some stuff's not moving the right way, or blood stagnation, period cramps and clotting and things like that. That would be considered a blood stagnation. So there's all these ways that our body manifests stagnated energy, and Reiki is a really gentle and useful tool to supporting the energy flow continuing to move through the body effectively.
And what does a Reiki session look like?
Yeah, it's light, maybe hands-on, but mostly just gentle hands-off, hands just above the body and moving through the different energy centers of the body. And a Reiki practitioner can feel or sense when the energy is kind of wanted more in one place or another. It feels like heat. When I have my hands on a certain place, it's just like, oh my gosh, this person is like really using the energy in this place. And then it will subtly release when it's time to move to another energy center. And that was really my first introduction to more alternative or Eastern philosophies when I was in Maine. Because one of my mom's college friends, Walt, shout out to you if you're listening to this, is my Reiki master, and he is a phenomenal human being. And he started inviting me to train with Reiki under him from the time I was, I don't know, maybe 16 or 17. And every year he would say, are you ready? And I would say, I'm not ready, because I felt like I wasn't, I don't know, spiritually ready enough or awakened enough or something. And finally, after a few years, he said, you're ready. You're as ready as you're going to be. It's time. And I said, okay. And started studying Reiki with him, and then was a member of a Reiki share of like 10 practitioners when I was still back in Bangor, Maine. And that was absolutely phenomenal. And then we actually had a program where we would go into the local hospital and offer Reiki to the cancer patients. And it was really, really soothing and healing for them. And that was, my first entry into alternative medicine, really.
That's so cool.
It can be emotional.
Extremely.
So have you
can.
ever done it?
I did it with a neighbor actually across the way. She was training. I don't know. I would like to have another experience.
I had somebody do. I've only done it once, and I'm always, I'm not always, but I'm getting better. But I can be very analytical and question. I'm like, oh, I don't know. And so, anyways, I went. It was actually somebody that we know, and she did it. She was doing like a PT session with me. I was having some pain, but then she did that at the end.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened. I just burst into tears, and I left, and I'm like calling my friend. I'm like, I don't know what just happened, but I was like crying, but I was like, I feel better. I was like, a weight had been lifted, but it was just like all this.
It's a common experience.
Yes, I was just like, but it blew my mind. I was like, she didn't even touch me. Like she was just kind of hovering, like, and I was like, it was like magic. I was like, I don't know what just happened, but something happened. And I was like, okay. But I think, I think, for anybody out there who questions, I'm so learning, especially I feel like this year, I trying new things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's such a big world, and there's so many different types of ways to grow and to heal. And, and I just want to try it all now. It's like, I'm sure some of it may or may not work, but, just not being so close-minded is like really, coming into the forefront for me, I think right now.
Nice.
Is it considered a certification, a talent? What do you, it's a
For
very,
Reiki?
yeah.
It's considered, in order to practice it, the idea is you have to have an attunement by a Reiki master, which is basically the attunement has to do with your hands. And the idea is that we're not doing anything except for a vessel for the energy to move through.
Oh, it's so
And
neat.
It is so neat. And we live in such a cool age right now because there's actually research that's coming out about these things that used to be considered woo-woo stuff. And now there's research about wilderness therapy. There's research about Reiki. There's research about how important it is to move our bodies. And it's finally being meditation. It's all backed up now. And I think that it's powerful. It's a powerful
It
age we're
really
living
is.
in.
And I
Yeah.
feel, I see it in my children. They teach meditation, they talk about it at school and yoga and all these different things. And I will do some meditation sometimes with my kids. And like if I'm amped up or stressed or something, my son, will come up to me like, Mom, you need to go meditate. And I'm like, instantly, I'm like, oh, okay, I better check myself. And he's right. Like, yeah, I should. And I see it in them, that how it can help them too. And it's really amazing. And I think it's so amazing to be able to have all these different alternatives that are not in a pill form or something like that, and that don't have to be something that is extremely expensive, that can be accessible and affordable to everyone.
Well, and so much of the time, the pills that are being prescribed are causing the very problems people are trying to avoid.
Right.
I mean, I work a lot with women, and one of the most common ones that I see is birth control. And I make this face because how many women, myself included, that when you started your period, whether it was 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever years old, and you had a bad period and you went to the doctor and they said, oh, you have acne and cramps, we're going to put you on birth control to manage it. And then, we're on birth control 5, 10, 15, however many years. And then women want to have babies. And it's like, we're not in connection to our bodies at all. It's like, do you know what ovulation is? Do you know how long your cycle is? Do you know what, position your cervix is in throughout the month and that it changes? I mean, I could sidebar on that one for a long time, but it's just, we medicalize things that really need so much attention and need us to slow down as opposed to
I never
medicate.
knew that your cervix changes positions. You just taught me something.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have one anymore. I had to have a hysterectomy and a bunch of stuff done after my second child. But I totally didn't know all of that stuff.
There's
like,
right. And they don't teach us. Instead of teaching us about our bodies and how to take care of ourselves and what hormonal imbalances might be causing X, Y, and Z, or what blood stagnation might be causing cramps, and how breathing techniques and yoga could create relief. It's like, no, they don't tell us any of that. They medicate us from a very
what's
early
the harm
age.
in trying these things?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, that's amazing. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because I have the Mirena, the IUD, and for several months I have to get it taken out, and its expiration has happened, and there is such a strong part of me. I've been discussing this with Travis a lot. I may have discussed it with you. I don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want birth control. I also am not ready to have children right now. So I need to keep I guess I got to reach out to more professionals because yes, the obvious, right, of to have protected sex, but there is a part of me that so wants to just be my natural self. Yeah. And like you said, be in tune with my cycles. Like I just want to be myself. Right. And I don't want to have anything extra. And there's this just strong, like very, very, very strong. I don't know how to describe
visceral.
Yes. That I'm just, and I have an appointment to get one put in, but I'm like kind of hoping before then that I can come up with something else. And I don't want to be on the pill anymore. Yeah. This will be my third IUD. What the heck is just secreting, hormones? What is that doing? I have this fatigue thing that I'm dealing with. Right. I'm like, what, does it have something to do with that? So, and I'm sure there's other people that feel the same way I do.
Of course. And I actually don't know that there's a better metaphor for the relationship that we have to the subtle changes in nature and like the seasons of nature, similarly to the woman's body. Yeah. We have such a rhythm and a cycle and a flow and subtle seasonal changes. And I have a cycles of change map that I've overlaid the natural cycles of the world with our cycles. And as a teaching tool to really talk about that and really learn like it, because it is a symptom. Our disconnection with our bodies is the same way that we're disconnected with nature. It's really parallel. And that's not your fault. That's not any of our, that's not my fault. We were taught that. And all of us were. We've been raised in a culture where we've been less connected to nature and our bodies than this Western medical model. And that is what the foundation of my practice has been around, is how can we really figure out what's going on here and form an integrative model of health that is not so medicalized
Yeah.
and making people sick, really, at the end of the day.
Yes.
I know you've dealt with illnesses yourself.
Yeah.
You've talked to us with Lyme. And what did that whole process and like, how did you find out about that? And you know, how did you help?
Yeah. So how to keep the long story shortish. So basically, for a lot of my childhood, I had kind of rogue symptoms of things, and I would just be sick more often than my siblings or my family, or I would have, rashes or infections or random things happen. And I would go to the doctors and they would say, "We don't know what's wrong. We don't know what's wrong. You're fine. It's probably stress. It's probably this, probably that." So for many years, I felt okay, but I wasn't thriving. I knew that my body wasn't functioning as well as it could. And then I moved out here and moved into the house that I now live in with my husband. And within a few weeks of living there, I was like on bed rest. I was so sick. I thought it was a flu, but then it just didn't go away. And so I went to an integrative doctor out here, and within 10 minutes, she says, "I think you moved into a house with mold, and I think you have chronic Lyme disease." And I said, "Bullshit. No way." They're like, I'm from Maine. I've heard of Lyme disease. No one ever thought of it as a big deal when I was growing up. I was like, no way, that this cannot be what it is. And so went home, did the mold test, did the Lyme test, and both of them lit up like Christmas trees. I'm like, holy shit, she nailed me in 10 minutes.
Wow.
So that began a few-year-long and continuing really journey of really figuring out how to handle this. And have you guys seen the documentary Heal yet? Heal. Okay, you got to watch this movie. It's fantastic. And it connects to all the things that we've been talking about. But really, one of the big things it talks about is the mind-body connection and how powerful what we think about our health is. And so one of the doctors I was working with had this very pessimistic view of Lyme disease. She was like, it's a forever thing. You're going to be dealing with this forever. You're going to take all these supplements forever. It's just, buckle up, girl. And I just said, no, I'm not buying it. I don't believe it. I don't think that's true. So I started a big inquiry, and I started working with a lot of different doctors and consulting with a lot of different practitioners and other folks that had been diagnosed with Lyme disease. And one of the things that I did was I flew out to California to work with a specialist with the use of a skio machine. And it's similar to a Rife machine, but basically it's a mechanized version of Reiki. It works with biofeedback. It works with your frequencies in your body, and it identifies where there's something that's a poor frequency, something that's not right, and it helps align the frequencies and push out whatever the stagnant energy is. So I worked with her for a weekend, and that was fantastic. And I felt a big shift with that. And I did a lot of naturopathic remedies, and just really, really focused on my health and my diet, as well as all of this other stuff that we've been talking about, really attending to my relationship with my body, with, my spirituality, with my mind, how are my thoughts, really dealing with this? Am I, attending to this idea that I'm going to be sick forever? Am I a victim, or am I going to be okay? And not that it's always that easy. It's complicated. I don't want to oversimplify it. And 2 years, I'm more than 2 years out now, and I am completely asymptomatic. I feel fantastic. I feel better than I've ever felt in my life. We mitigated the mold, and I continue to attend to like a much, throughout the process, I also found out that I was, gluten intolerant and things like that, that were basically I was doing things that was keeping my body in a state that my immune system couldn't do what it needed to do. I was adding to the toxic environment and adding to the immune suppression so that my body couldn't be in that healing state to do what it already was very capable of doing. And I think that is true for a lot of disease, not all of it, but a lot of it. Again, it's like, can we give our bodies the ideal opportunity to really attend to what needs to be attended to? Yeah. So it was a journey, but it has shaped a lot of my work now. And so the clinic that I'm now a part of, I co-founded it with a woman named Nikki Giandomenico, and she's a naturopathic doctor. And our whole vision has been, how do we really create a space where people can come and have all of the modalities that they really want or need to attend to their healing journey? So she's a totally fantastic naturopathic doctor that specializes in chronic illness, including Lyme disease, and brings in really fantastic kind of shamanic practices to her work as well. And then a dear friend and colleague, Gretchen Pangelinen, who actually is in Lafayette, she is a Reiki practitioner and she's in the clinic. And we have a psychologist in the clinic who does somatic experiencing work, who is totally fantastic. And we now have an integrative massage therapist who's adding her gifts as well. And so, and we really all come in with that perspective that like, this is about, it's not about the diagnosis, it's about creating an environment of healing. So, yeah.
That's a great, that's amazing that you've built that clinic.
Yeah.
And you've been able to bring those people in.
Yeah. It's been a big journey. It feels really exciting to be here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I feel like I mean, I could go on asking.
I
a
know.
million
I
more
was like,
questions.
oh no, how are we always already up on time?
But I really appreciate you coming in and
This is
teaching us
amazing.
and talking to us. And it's so interesting. And it's, I enjoy learning about all the different types of ways to heal and like all that there is out there in this world that we can go and experience that we don't know about. Because like I said, I didn't know about, wilderness therapy and eco journey and any of that until just doing this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, yeah, I want to know more about that. And I know there's other people out there who probably want to know more about that because I think for me, it's something that I was like, ding, 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 that I can get behind that. Like,
well, and we all can, because actually I just think it's the natural state that we all want. We all want to be slowed down, connected to nature, connected to our bodies, but sometimes we just need to be reminded.
Well, and I think it's important, like for me, it's like people, mental health is such a big issue right now, just everywhere. And I've been hearing a lot about suicide lately and having a lot of people who've had people who they know who have committed suicide and all of this stuff. And all of this, mental illness is at the forefront of a lot of many things. And I think some people may be shy or may steer away from that. I don't want to go it can be intimidating.
Stigmatized
I think.
as well.
To like sit in this office with this person and it can, but to know that there's other ways of doing it, that you can just walk, side by side and talk with somebody. To me, I feel like it feels much more approachable. And I'm hoping that somebody else out there could hear this and like learn and be like, maybe that will inspire them to go get some help, if they need to. So, that there's other ways. It doesn't have to be this cookie cutter way of getting help.
And a whole nother topic that we didn't get into for another time is technology and how that is connected.
We have to have you
all
back
of this,
on.
but we need to talk about that sometime.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh my
we
gosh,
need to put
yes,
down our computers and our phones.
Yeah. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
We'll have to have
But connected to all of that we talked about, really.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
We'll do a follow-up because we just filled up an hour and that's like solid content of such fascinating, interesting things. And that'll be wonderful to chat about that. There's all kinds of things beyond that. If there's listeners out there that want to learn more about you, where can they find that information?
Yes.
Where can they go?
Yeah, so the website is expandingrootswellness.com, and my email address is angela@expandingrootswellness. So I am always happy to talk about all of this stuff and then some. Yeah.
Awesome.
And we'll put all those links on our website too.
Thank
so that,
you.
People can find you there as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing
Thank you
with us.
both. It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure.
This is great.
Thank
Went by
you.
way too fast.
It did.
If you have an interesting story, something funny, something sad, something you want the world to know, please email us. We want you to share your experiences with us. We'll take these, we'll collect them, we'll do some episodes sometimes where we'll read them. So if you want to be anonymous, please just let us know. We won't read your name. If you want your name read, then we will. But send us those stories, comments to info@herturntotalkpodcast.com. And we also ask, if you like what you're hearing, please rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you.